the agenda is an update from Michael Britt on the Arizona Public Safety Broadband.
Thank you, Commissioners. Let me give an update on the National Public Safety Broadband Network effort, both from a national perspective and a state perspective. The first section is on the state and local implementation grant program. That's the $3 million that's been provided to Arizona to perform education and outreach to statewide local jurisdictions and local and tribal jurisdictions. And then the phase 2 effort will be to collect data on possible shared infrastructure. Has 2 budget touch points. The first, since we received the award, since we last talked in July, we've received the award notice mid-August. We provided the NTIA SLIC grant program managers with a baseline expenditure plan which has been approved, and we have also submitted our first quarterly report since we got it mid-quarter. By the time we got through with all the baseline plans and all the approvals, we had a report to provide. So we've gone through all the machinations for that. Plus the Arizona Department of Administration, we had not had a national grant from a federal funding agency, so we had to get roles and responsibilities identified and cleared away within the department itself. The first bullet point in terms of the FirstNet is required to work with state and local and tribal jurisdictions to get a plan together and figure out what the state needs versus what the drivers for the national network are. And FirstNet has repeatedly stated that they want to have as many interactions with the state as necessary to get everybody on the same page before we get to that point in the SLIC process where there's an opt-in, opt-out decision. I've been very pleased with the approach they're taking, having been involved with multiple large national rollout type projects. The more you meet, the more you talk, the more you get the issues on the table, the easier it's going to be, and it's a kind of a no surprises kind of resolution. For us, the next steps will be to develop the education outreach plan. We have an established working group that we've been putting together preliminary and the early on plan. But we need to develop a detailed plan for all jurisdictions statewide and to develop the content that will be delivered. So that's kind of the first 2 months, and we'll plan to kick it off in January. In terms of FirstNet, they've had 2 board meetings since we last met. They had a special review committee looking into the allegations by Paul Fitzgerald that the FirstNet board was not being open and transparent, was being uneven in terms of access to information and budget and finances, and in terms of network planning. Basically, this was growing pains, in my opinion anyway, just growing pains of a board that was trying to do general manager role and basically trying to actually get moving before, they were, since that time, and that was back in April that Paul brought that to everybody's attention, they've hired a general manager, a deputy general manager, and rearranged their roles and responsibilities to more appropriate levels of director. Board of directors is doing board of directors work, and general managers are making decisions but getting it validated by the board. A lot more transparency is in place. Anyway, the committee found that there was no illegal activity, but they recognized that they were probably not doing things appropriately. They've also, for instance, all the contractors that they hired up front, they hired about 30 people. They have rearranged, basically let them go and gone through another process to bring on staff. So they kind of are, correcting any errors that they made. FirstNet board meeting in October, they announced and approved a national center in Northern Virginia, and then also kind of a R&D R&D Research Center out in Denver, or out in Boulder. So they'll have an eastern presence and a western presence. And at least for the education and outreach portion of the effort, they're planning to regionalize and staff up regionally under FEMA regions to give support to any of the states that need it for education and outreach. The state points of contact have been asking for standardized documentation so that we're all giving the same message, and ask for selected documentation, be it for public safety, operational technical types, elected officials, basically a kind of a different message for different individuals that are going to be involved in this, or they're going to have to join in the decision making. FirstNet and Department of Commerce announced this is part of the correcting the way they're going about things. They've got a blanket purchase agreement amongst 3 firms that are going to be doing basically the headhunting process for their staff hiring. Even though it's a blanket agreement, these 3 firms are going to be competitively filling positions for FirstNet all along. So it's not awarded and they get the money, they still have to fight for the privilege of providing staff. And they plan to hire, I've heard about around 100 staff, which is probably reasonable. They've got their C-level people pretty much in place, CIO, CTO, CFO. They're now got the deputy general manager, deputy general manager, and they're moving towards the director level and staffing. In terms of what were the waiver recipients became the early builders. There were 21, and then 7 got VTOP funds, so they were focused on the 7 with VTOP funds. LA RICS and New Mexico have been approved for their license and will be moving forward with their early rollout. And they're still in negotiations with Mississippi and Texas, and they reopened discussions that had been closed with Adams County, Colorado, and New Jersey. New Jersey is promoting themselves as a place to test deployables. So they're kind of picking niche areas that will help FirstNet get early input on how things build out. And they also announced a new finance person, Barry Boniface, who's going to be is a new member of the FirstNet board. Within the state, the Arizona Public Safety Broadband Work Group, we reestablished bi-weekly work group meetings. We've been reviewing education outreach material from other states and from FirstNet. One of the things that we came, as we started looking through this documentation, our nom de plume that we picked of the Arizona Public Safety Broadband Network got harder and harder to say at every time we said it, and the acronym is not short and sweet. We looked at other documents, Oregon FirstNet and Arizona FirstNet Network. Generally, the consensus was Arizona FirstNet is short, sweet, snappy, and gets the idea across in terms of our efforts, so that's kind of the direction we're going to go. Initial meetings that we have established with the regional wireless systems. A couple of things, if we look at those, the footprint of our regional wireless systems, RWC, TRWC, YRCS, and PC-WIN, that is the majority of our public safety personnel and staff. Further, they already are operating under a fee-based system, so the business model is conducive to saying, FirstNet, public safety broadband being brought on as an additional service under the existing billing / whatever. So that's not a done deal. That's a discussion that needs to be started.
Sure. Mike, can you send out an email to the commissioners with those dates and locations for those meetings?
Certainly can. Certainly can. The first one will be this coming Thursday at the MAG with the RWC. So that one's real soon, but might be before I get an email out. So.
Anybody need details for that one? Okay. If you do, please reach out to us.
Send it out there?
But otherwise, we'll get.
Okay, the agenda is up
Okay,
on
good.
the rwc.org.
All right, we'll make sure to get the rest of them out to everybody.
Okay. All right, and in addition, we've got a Office of Emergency Communications Technical Assistance that is broadband coverage and coverage workshop. We plan for that to be a joint meeting between the PSCC and the Arizona Public Safety Broadband Network Working Group in mid-January. It's about a 2 to 3 hour session and basically brings up things to think about when you're talking about coverage statewide. And then we also plan to do county kickoff meetings. With some counties, it just made sense to combine them. They have either a combined TIC-P or their footprint is such that they tend to work hand in hand anyway. And then we are in the process of developing tracking and reporting. Part of the tracking and reporting we have to do is in-kind contribution. This is a 80-20 grant, 80% federal, 20% state, and part of our state contribution is from members of the public like you. If you could fill out an in-kind form, we'd appreciate it, and the time you spend listening is time that you've contributed to public safety broadband in Arizona. All right, we're currently working on job descriptions for the project manager and administrator role, and also going through the state procurement office with a statement of work for basically, since we plan to do approximately 75 meetings statewide, we were thinking of hiring an outside firm that just does meetings. And so we won't impact the PSCC office and overwhelm PSCC office with nothing but the administration of meetings.
That sounds like my job.
Yeah, that's good. You volunteer, please. One thing I wanted to point out is that there are several national public safety agencies like APCO and AZPSIC, National Public Safety Telecommunications Councils, that are jumping on the FirstNet effort in a big way. One of under the APCO Broadband Committee, the management of APCO has asked that committee to do an outreach effort to educate the APCO members themselves as to what the impacts of public safety broadband will be on them. And since APCO represents a lot of APCO and NENA type personnel, it's probably a good place to start. So the committee is going to have multiple featured articles on FirstNet, and we'll also have a regular column in the paper magazine, and we'll be revitalizing the website for APCO under Broadband. And then Southern will be able to leverage that content as it evolves. The NIPSIC working groups, this is basically a list of pre-prioritized what should be dealt with as we work through the public safety broadband impact. The first one, the master SOR, has been written. The launch SOR is basically just what does public safety need from FirstNet on day one. The qualitative requirements have been written, and that was published in December of 2012. They're right now kicking off the quantitative in terms of how many, how far, how long should the batteries last on the towers, and so on and so forth. A lot of the nuances here, especially as you get down towards the bottom, third from the bottom, console, LTE, and LTE to LMR integration. Those are the things that we need to start. Once we quote-unquote get data available, then we need to worry about how well it integrates with our consoles or with LMR. And then lastly, we had a opportunity, the National Institute on Standards and Technology had their PSC Airlines in Boulder, who was testing together, held a R&D workshop. They want to know what they should be focused on for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of their R&D work. Because of the grant, we were able to take stakeholders, Jeremy Knoll, Ron Parks, Morgan Hoagland, up to Boulder. We had an intense 3-day work session to identify and point out what public safety needs. There were about 150 people in attendance, about 75% vendors, 25% public safety. We were not outnumbered in terms of public safety. And basically, we went through, a lot of what is required. A lot of it went kind of blue sky, but that was fine for their purposes anyway. And then we were also able to have a hands-on in the lab. And so Morgan, Jeremy, Ron were able to see the equipment. What was really unique about it was that they had cores, which is kind of like master controller, from Nokia Siemens, hooked up to eNote Bs from Ericsson or X and Y and Z, all able to interconnect and get established in communicating. So from public safety's perspective, that means there will be competition amongst vendors. It won't be proprietary, and if you're working with one vendor, you've got to use that vendor's equipment across the board. And that's one of the main goals of this, this lab, was to have all the equipment in one place and